These are the 70s rock stars you didn't know hooked up, sometimes even tying the knot in secret. So let's travel back to the 70s, shall we? When the music was loud, the fashion was louder, and half the magic happened offstage. From brief flings to behind-the-scenes romances, these unexpected pairings helped shape the soundtrack to our youth. So let's dive into the rock star relationships you might not have known about. Well, until now. Buell and Steven Tyler. Back in the mid-70s, Buell, a gorgeous model, singer, and fixture in the rock scene, had a relationship with Steven Tyler, the flamboyant frontman of Aerosmith. Now, this was right as the band was exploding, with albums like Toys in the Attic and Rocks. And at that time, Buell was kind of already known in the music circles for her friendships and romances with several big-name musicians, including Todd Rundgren, but we'll get to Todd in a bit.
Cosmic kiss, I knew it from the start. It's only one.
Because this BB and Steven relationship would be life-changing for both of them. Because if you didn't know, this relationship would result in the birth of a daughter, the ethereal Liv Tyler, who you might know fighting ring wraiths in Lord of the Rings, or eating animal crackers with Ben Affleck in Armageddon. Although, that connection didn't actually come to light until many years later. For a while, Liv was raised believing Todd Rundgren was her dad, which shows just how private this entire situation was kept. The truth reportedly came out when Liv Tyler noticed a striking resemblance between herself and Steven while watching him perform with Aerosmith.
I still miss you, babe. Don't wanna miss you, babe.
BB would confirm that Steven was Liv's biological father, and over time the family came together in a deeply loving and supportive way. It's a story with its share of twists, but ultimately one that highlights how tangled and touching rock and roll relationships could be behind the scenes. You know, between the usual stories of parties and poor choices. Carly Simon and Cat Stevens.
Never, never, never.
Now here's a soft-spoken pairing you might have missed, even if you wore out the grooves on both of their records. Back in the early 70s, Carly Simon and Cat Stevens, two of the most introspective singer-songwriters of that era, reportedly had a brief romance. Now it didn't last long, but it definitely left a creative imprint on both artists. This was around the time Stevens had just released Tea for the Tillerman, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. And Carly, well, she was about to break through with Anticipation and No Secrets. Carly would later say that that hit song Anticipation was actually written while she was waiting for Cat Stevens to show up for their date. Little fun fact about that date, dinner that night was homemade chicken and béarnaise sauce. Talk about turning a moment of downtime into a classic. The song became a radio sensation and then found new life in that Heinz ketchup commercial we all remember, a slow pour for a slow burn of a ballad. Meanwhile, the two maintained a quiet mutual respect, and though they did move on quite quickly, that short spark between them left its mark on the music industry. It just goes to show you, even the most low-key love stories in the 70s had a chart-topping ripple. Joni Mitchell and James Taylor.
You can close your eyes, it's alright.
If ever there was a pairing that felt like a folk rock daydream, it was Joni Mitchell and James Taylor. These two icons of introspective songwriting connected in 1970, right as both of their stars were beginning to rise. Taylor had just released Sweet Baby James, and Joni was writing what would become Blue. They were both young, thoughtful, and navigating the early chaos of fame, and for a short time, they were reportedly a couple. James would actually play guitar on several of the tracks in Blue, including California and All I Want.
Oh, California, I'm coming home.
And fans have long believed those songs, along with This Flight Tonight, carry traces of their relationship. Joni, in turn, is said to have inspired Taylor's You Can Close Your Eyes, a tender and timeless love song. While their romance was brief, the musical results were anything but, and even after they parted ways, their admiration for one another never really faded. Their songs from that period still feel like echoes from a shared chapter. It's one of those rare moments in music when love and collaboration were so closely entwined, you can still hear it in every note, every word. Mick Jagger and Marsha Hunt. You might know Marsha Hunt as a model, singer, and actress who lit up London in the late 60s and early 70s, but fewer people remember that she reportedly had a quiet but meaningful relationship with Mick Jagger during that time. It wasn't a publicity stunt or a red carpet affair. It was kept almost entirely out of the public eye. But their connection was very, very real, and it resulted in the birth of Jagger's first kid in 1970, right as the Stones were transitioning from flower power icons into full-blown rock royalty. Marsha was already making waves in the West End production of Hair, and her voice and style made her a standout in the countercultural scene. She later said that the Rolling Stones frontman kept his distance at first, but eventually became a devoted father. As for their romance, she described it as private and poetic, a genuine connection that didn't need flashing cameras or front-page headlines. In a decade full of rock star pairings that grabbed attention, this one quietly shaped a chapter of Jagger's personal life without ever becoming tabloid material. Patti Smith and Alan Lanier. This one flew under the radar for a lot of folks, but it's a pairing that makes perfect sense if you were hanging around the New York rock scene in the early 70s. Patti Smith, the punk poet firebrand of CBGB fame, reportedly had a long, on and off romance with Alan Lanier, the keyboardist and guitarist for Blue Oyster Cult. Now, they weren't a tabloid couple, but they were close, both personally and musically. Lanier actually encouraged Patti's shift from poetry to rock and roll, and she actually co-wrote some songs for Blue Oyster Cult, including Career of Evil. Their connection stretched through most of the decade, with Lanier sometimes appearing on Patti's own recordings as well. It's one of those creative relationships where you can't always draw the line between love and collaboration, but both left a mark on each other's work, and the music world felt it for the better. Todd Rundgren and B.B. Buell. Before Liv Tyler knew who her biological dad was, Todd Rundgren was the one raising her. That's how tight his relationship with model and rock muse B.B. Buell was back in the early 70s. They were the glam rock couple, him with the Technicolor sound and wild hair, her with the magazine covers and a backstage pass to every band that mattered. BB and Todd got together around 1972, and while their relationship wasn't always smooth, Todd stepped up big time. When BB gave birth to Liv in 1977, from her brief fling with Steven Tyler that we've already talked about, Todd agreed to raise her as his own to protect her from Tyler's then very toxic lifestyle. That's some serious rock star heart. And meanwhile, Todd was busy producing albums for Grand Funk Railroad and Meat Loaf, while still making his own mind-bending music, like Something Anything and A Wizard, a True Star. But through it all, BB stayed a constant. Their love wasn't built to last forever, but their story has layers of loyalty, music, and unexpected grace. Totally 70s, totally human. David Crosby and Joni Mitchell.
I'm going to find a space inside.
Before there was Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and long before Joni Mitchell became the high priestess of blue music, she reportedly had a brief but important relationship with David Crosby. This was around 1967, right as both were stepping into the spotlight. Crosby had just been fired from the Byrds and was searching for a new creative path, while Joni was still making her name in coffee houses and small clubs. Crosby was so taken with her talent that he produced her debut album, Song to a Seagull, and then he proudly introduced her to other musicians in the growing Laurel Canyon scene. Their romance didn't last long, but it helped kickstart one of the most influential songwriting careers of the decade.
I've looked at love from both sides now, from give.
Crosby later said that Joni was so brilliant and independent that no one person could really hold her, and that she was always destined to stand apart. But still, their time together left a lasting bond. You could say it was one of those right person, right time moments that helped shape the sound of the 70s before it had even begun. Rick Danko and Nico. This one flew way under the mainstream radar, but yeah, Rick Danko of the band and Nico, the icy muse of the Velvet Underground, had a brief and smoky fling in the early 70s. It was unexpected, like Woodstock met Warhol. They crossed paths in that same New York scene that birthed 1,000 strange collaborations. Nico, with her German accent and haunted voice, was orbiting the art rock world. And Rick, the soulful bassist and sometime lead singer of the band, was fresh off The Last Waltz and deep in Americana myth-making. The chemistry, odd but electric. There's no hit song or dramatic breakup, but just a few whispers and sightings, like the time they were seen leaving a club together in LA, looking every bit the gothic folk fever dream.
Hear the way she talks.
According to some scene insiders, Nico saw Rick as gentle and real, a stark contrast to the darkness she usually gravitated toward. It didn't last long, but it's the kind of strange, beautiful pairing that could only happen in the 1970s. Two completely different worlds colliding briefly under the haze of something cosmic. Mark Bolan and Gloria Jones.
That you were meant for me.
If you were spinning T-Rex records in the early 70s, you were likely caught up in Mark Bolan's glitter-drenched rock revolution. But behind the scenes, the story goes that Bolan had a deeply committed relationship with Gloria Jones, an American soul singer who played a much bigger role in his life than most fans ever realized. They met in the early 70s when Gloria was singing backup for T-Rex, and things got serious quickly. Their relationship actually lasted until Bolan's untimely death in 1977, and they had a son together named Roland. Gloria didn't just share his life, she influenced his music too, especially during his later soul-tinged period.
Take not give and that's not living. Oh, tainted love.
It was Gloria who had originally recorded Tainted Love back in the 60s, and years later she dedicated her own album Windstorm to Mark after his passing. Theirs was a real love story in the middle of a 70s glam rock whirlwind. Carly Simon and Mick Jagger.
Gave away the things you love, and one of
Most people know that Mick Jagger sang uncredited backup on Carly Simon's You're So Vain, but did you know that they actually hooked up too? It's been one of rock's most whispered about rumors since the 1970s. And Carly, well, she's never flat out denied it. In fact, she once said, quote, "Mick Jagger's voice happened to be in the right place at the right time." Okay, Carly, okay. They met in the early 70s and had an undeniable spark. He showed up to her recording session, hopped on the mic, and helped create one of the most iconic choruses ever. Yeah, without credit. Total Jagger move.
So vain that you think this song is about you.
But here's where it gets a bit juicier. Many believe that he's actually one of the vain men that Carly was calling out in the song, because she has confirmed it's about multiple men, and Jagger's name keeps floating up to the top of the suspect list, right next to Warren Beatty. Even if it was brief, their flirtation lives on through that great song. It's the kind of behind-the-music moment that makes 70s rock feel like one big, tangled love letter. Buell and David Bowie.
Ziggy really sang, screwed up eyes and screwed down hedges.
Yes, Buell once again. If anyone was at the epicenter of rock's wildest circles, it was BB. She was a muse to more than a few legends. One of the more surprising connections was David Bowie and their brief romance. It was reportedly during his Ziggy Stardust phase in 1973, and according to BB, it was emotional, intense, and unlike anything else she'd experienced at that time. She reportedly described their relationship as more than just a fling, more of an artistic and spiritual meeting of two very curious minds. Bowie was known for pushing boundaries, both in music and identity. And Buell has said they shared long, meaningful conversations on top of their chemistry. It wasn't one of the most public relationships, but it certainly stuck with her. And given Bowie's chameleon-like presence, it adds another layer to his already fascinating legacy. Cher and Gregg Allman. Now everyone knows Cher was married to Sonny, but did you know she also married Southern rock legend Gregg Allman? Yeah. They tied the knot in 1975, just 3 days after her divorce from Sonny was finalized. Wild, you know? But hold up, it gets wilder. Because 9 days later, Cher filed for divorce. Gregg's H addiction and alcohol issues were just too much. But somehow they did reconcile. She said, quote, "He was like nobody I'd ever met. He was a gentle, hard, loving, wild man." And they actually gave it another shot and even had a son together, Elijah Blue Allman. The two even recorded an album as Allman and Woman. Now that's called To the Hard Way in 1977, and it bombed big time. But it's now kind of become a cult classic of sorts for its pure WTF energy. Imagine mixing Cher's glam pop style with Gregg's swampy, bluesy southern rock. It was chaotic, it was doomed. But it was also kind of romantic in that perfectly messy 70s way. Cher later said she truly loved him, but quote, "You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved." David Bowie and Mick Jagger. Now here's a rumor that's been floating around through rock history like a glitter-covered ghost. David Bowie and Mick Jagger, two of the boldest, most magnetic performers of the 1970s. Both known for their charisma, their genre-defying style, and their unapologetic confidence. But for decades, fans and tabloids have wondered if the two may have shared more than just a stage. And that story gained real traction in the early 90s, when Bowie's ex-wife, Angie Bowie, claimed in her memoir that she once walked in on the two of them in bed. And Angie repeated that story in multiple interviews, saying it happened at their home in London. Now, neither Bowie nor Jagger ever confirmed that account, and over the years, both men kept relatively quiet on the subject. A 2012 unauthorized biography by Christopher Anderson echoed that very same story, citing unnamed sources who described the pair as very close. But again, no direct confirmation has ever surfaced. What we do know for sure is that Bowie and Jagger were close friends, collaborators, and massive admirers of each other's work. They famously recorded Dancing in the Street together in 1985 and often appeared in each other's social circles throughout the 70s. So did something more ever happen? No one really knows except the people involved, but what's clear is that both men challenged conventions, musically, stylistically, and personally. And they did it with mutual respect. Whether the rumors are truth, exaggeration, or just the product of a glam-era imagination, they speak to the bold energy of a time when rock stars were redefining what it meant to be themselves. And hey, maybe that's the real story worth remembering. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham.
Have you any dreams you'd like to sell?
Okay, we all know Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks dated. That's rock history 101. But did you know they were actually high school sweethearts? They met at a party in the late 60s when Lindsey was singing California Dreamin' and Stevie just casually joined in on the harmony. Instant connection. They started a folk rock duo called Buckingham Nicks, released a 1973 album that flopped, and then got scooped up by Fleetwood Mac in 1975. The rest, rock soap opera gold. Their breakup during the making of Rumors turned that album into one of the most emotionally raw records ever. Stevie once said, quote, "We never, ever, ever thought that we would break up." Meanwhile, Lindsey poured all that heartbreak into Go Your Own Way, brutal but brilliant. Even while they were falling apart off stage, they created some of the most iconic harmonies on stage.
You can go your own way. Go your own way.
It's messy, but it's magical, and it's the kind of real-life drama that made the 70s unforgettable. Fleetwood Mac wasn't just a band, it was a full-blown relationship saga with guitar solos. Joni Mitchell and Jackson Browne.
If it takes all night, that'll be alright.
Toward the early 70s, Joni Mitchell reportedly entered into a brief but emotionally intense relationship with Jackson Browne. You see, both were rising stars in that Laurel Canyon scene I spoke about, young, poetic, and riding the momentum of new fame. And according to those close at the time, their romance began in 1972 and things ended abruptly. Joni was said to have taken that breakup hard, and many believed it played a role in a particularly challenging period in her life. Though neither Joni nor Jackson has spoken about it much publicly, the emotional weight of it seems to echo through the music, especially in the stark and aching tracks from For the Roses. Jackson, for his part, kept quiet about the entire chapter. It's one of those relationships that burned hot and fast and left behind more than just a memory.
Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They pay for
It left a trace in the melodies, the lyrics, and the silences in between. A snapshot of two iconic voices crossing paths at the height of a golden era. Now, there you have it. Proof that behind all the gold records and backstage passes were real people falling in and out of love. Some of these romances left behind hit songs, awesome albums, and a ton of heartbreak, while others simply slipped into rock history with barely a whisper. But every one of them added something to the story of the music we still hold close. And so now we need to hear from you, the people who grew up with these tunes. Did any of these relationships surprise you? Were you there, catching glimpses of these stars in the magazines, or maybe even in person back in the day? Who made the best couple, and did I forget a rock star romance that maybe slipped under the radar? Well, get down in the comment section and tell me who. We could always make a round 2. If you enjoyed our juicy video, which I sure hope you did, please click that thumbs up icon, it really helps our channel a ton. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a trip down memory lane. But most importantly, from my entire team here at Do You Remember, I'm Nostalgic Nick, reminding you that in the 70s, the music wasn't the only thing that rocked.